Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated to helping leaders to become obstacle busters and live resilience. And I have a great guest to help us do just that, Jeremie Kubicek. Welcome to the show, Jeremie.
Warren, good to see you again. Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's always good to see you. Thank you again. You're a third-time returning guest to our show. So our leaders, I'm sure our listeners really appreciate that.
That's good. I love it. That's a privilege for me.
So those that might not be familiar with all of your work, can you just share kind of a brief introduction of your background and then really what inspired you and Steve Cochran to write the newest book, The Voice-Driven Leader?
Yeah. So the motivation for me has been I've lived all over the world. I've lived in Russia. I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in London. And I've just been in the leadership space forever. I used to own John Maxwell's assets. I used to work with lots of different thought leaders. And I kept just this passion of mine of trying to figure out, how do you get leadership to stick? How do you train leaders? And basically figured out that it's all about people who lead people. It's your team leaders. If your team leaders are healthy, if your team leaders have the right mindset, then they'll take care of those they lead. And it's just been frustrating for me as I've watched through the years of why leadership doesn't work, why cultures aren't built. And we think we've cracked the code. And that's what we put in this book. We're like, we think we've cracked the code on what has to happen to build a culture that transforms people and leverages people inside organizations.
Well, that's fascinating. So how does this book, because you've written a number of different leadership books, how does this fit into your overall marching story on leadership and the message that you are helping leaders to really embrace?
Yeah. So one of our first chapters, our first books we wrote was called The Five Voices. And The Five Voices is really designed to be focused on knowing yourself, like understanding who you are. So it's simplified personality in a leadership context. So we wrote the book. Then we had another book called The 100X Leader, and it was all about the Sherpa. And it was the idea that you've got to become a Sherpa in order to understand what leadership looks like. You have to climb while helping people climb. You have to perform while helping people perform. The voice-driven leader, it's like now it's the roadmap. So the Five Voices was like a lens to see people through. The 100X Leader was like the Sherpa, the mindset. Now we've actually built a roadmap that says, if you're leading people, who are they? What voice are they? Where are they on the roadmap? Are they in the onboarding season? Are they in the immersion stage? Are they in empowerment? Or are they in multiplying? And it's like a roadmap. And all we do is we help you go, I'm this personality, they're that personality, and where are they on the journey? And the goal is to help leaders get their people through the roadmap, get them down the line into the next level. Leader, not
The difference between that and reference to other leadership models.
Most of the leadership models are, I call them performance driven. Okay. So most of the books are Awaken the Giant Within, How to Be the Best Leader You Can Be. They're really about how do you perform at the highest levels. Well, that's one part of leadership. It's two sides of a coin. The other part is, well, how do I lead other people when I'm busy? How do I lead other? So another way to think of it, and I've worked a lot in sports, and so work with a lot of sports coaches, and the most of the coaches historically are kind of like, "Hey, I am who I am. This is how I lead. If you don't like it, go somewhere else." Right? And it's almost like conforming to their voice, not optimizing or not understanding who am I serving. So another way to think of it is the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd want done to you.
Yes.
Well, I don't need a hug. Why do you need a hug? I didn't get training. Why do you? So it gets misconstrued. The platinum rule, do unto others as they would want done. So the whole idea is know who you're talking to. What's their voice? How are they wired and structured? What does stress look like for them? So on and so forth. And then you lead them from their voice more than from your voice.
That's such an interesting, I guess, twist, if you will, from a leadership perspective. Because I assume, like most leaders, they lead the way they feel comfortable leading because that's their style.
That's right.
So you're suggesting to be able to take a different perspective and look at your team and how they prefer to be led.
That's it. Yeah, we had a women's basketball coach who had this team, and a good illustration of this. She was a strong pioneer, and she was just constantly on her girls. Well, she didn't realize that
Mm,
she was frustrated. Like some of the ladies weren't performing at their best, and she couldn't figure it out because they had all the talent. And so we were worked with her. She understood. Oh my gosh, I'm a pioneer. I'm running over them all. Huh. Well, how do they want who's my point guard? And we realized that the point guard, who was a good shooter too, she was a nurturer. And so she got real frazzled with lots and lots of pressure. So she realized that she needed to take the pressure off and actually put it on another girl who was another pioneer who could take the pressure and set
mm.
their shooting guard up for success, their point guard for success. And it worked. It was a dramatic twist because she finally realized, who am I talking with? How are they seeing the world? How can I help her be her best? Once I understood her, then I have a different strategy to get the most out of her. Same thing for business. It can happen. It happens all the time. If you take the time to know other people and where are they on their journey.
That's fascinating. So that's what you mean by voice really shapes culture.
That's it.
So if leaders can understand that powerful concept, then they can use their voice to actually influence their team from the positive, really change culture.
That's it. And there's five voices. So it's like if you understand the five voices, there's 16 different variations of those five voices, but there's
Hmm.
five main voices. It's almost like Warren. I used to live in Russia, and so I speak Russian.
Hmm.
And so when I meet someone, I was in the airport the other day, and I heard this guy. He was speaking Russian. I go, "Вот, дружи, как жизнь, да?" And he looks at me like, "What?" And he goes, "Ты понимаешь по-русски, да? You understand?" And he goes, "Да." And we just connected because I was speaking his language. He came alive when he's been forced as English is his primary language, living in the United States. So it's the same idea. It's like when you speak the natural language of another person's voice, they will appreciate you. They get that, like, you get me, you understand me, and they're more open to being led than being forced into someone else's style.
So when you're starting to work with leaders and they understand their voice, what is one of those obstacles that leaders like push back on the concept of speaking in someone else's voice?
Yeah, I mean, truly, it's a little, it's lazy. I mean, it's easier not to.
Hmm.
It's like training a dog. It's easier not to train a dog.
Hmm.
It's worse long term. It's miserable. So to do the hard work, if you do it right and put it in at the beginning, it's actually not that hard. You just have to do the work, and once you do, it gets easier and easier and easier. And then long term, it's great if you train the dog early. So the same way, taking the time to learn other people's voice, taking the time to adjust. It's not. I mean, we've made it so simple. For instance, if you're a guardian, you're going to want a lot more detail. So,
Hmm.
so if I'm leading a guardian, slow down and provide 4 or 5. Think about all the questions they're going to have, and then work through those questions with that guardian. If they're a nurturer, they're going to be focused on how everyone's doing and feeling, and like the feel. So, hey, and they're mostly going to be 70% of nurturers are female, 70%
Hmm.
of guardians are male. So some of these basic lines between guardians and nurturers that makes up 73% of the population, the majority. So if
Hmm.
you learn to speak guardian and nurturer, you're going to affect most people. And then the nuance of like the pioneers, 7% of the population, and then the connector, and then the creative. Those are the five voices. And the connector, creative, and pioneer are all future oriented. 27%, they're thinking about tomorrow.
Hmm.
73% are thinking about today. So if you know those dynamics, that's chapter 3 in the book, goes into all those details to know exactly how to speak someone else's language. And you know who you are, then it's just this fun game. And all of a sudden you try it. We did it with my kids when they were growing up. And my wife and I, she's a guardian. And my daughter's a creative, my son's a guardian, my youngest is a nurturer. And when we learned that, we changed the way we parented, because we started to provide answers and communicate based on who they were. And oh my gosh, it was so much better than it had been.
So once a leader started adapting this, how long does it really take the culture to shift when people start talking in their right voice?
Well, there's some things you can accelerate it. We have workshops. Yeah, we certify people on this, so you can get certified in running the systems. We have something called Five Voices Leader Academy, Five Voices for Teams. You can accelerate it, but we also built other tools around it. So if we have a whole bevy of tools around communication, around relational trust, around getting alignment, around execution. So it's really as deep as you want to go. It starts within 3 months. You start seeing some significant changes. About 6 months in, you're like, oh my gosh, this works. And
Mhm.
we've worked with Google 7 years now, I think, and they're like, this is the best system we've had. And I mean, it works. It sticks. So it's very sticky. It's very simple. It's simple enough for a 13-year-old to get. And we made it by design that way, so it will scale inside organizations. Whereas like DISC and Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, they're great tools. They don't stick very long because it's almost too complex and too complicated because you don't know what 7 with a wing 8 means if you weren't in the original teaching. And in the case of Giant and the Five Voices, we've made it simple enough where people can get it and they can aggregate in if they're a new employee.
That's fascinating in reference to taking that approach in reference to simplifying so the leaders will actually implement and use it. Because if it's too difficult, right, leaders will not implement it. Maybe it'll last for a month, maybe a year, but can you get a culture change to be able to adapt it?
That's it. That's the whole game. And that's why if you're listening to this as a leader, I would spend if I was you, I would spend all of my resources, whatever resources I was allocating towards training and development, I would spend all my resources on the people developers, team leaders, anyone who leads another person. Could be an executive, director, manager, supervisor. So my question to people all the time is, how many employees do you have? Great, you have 200. Okay, how many team leaders do you have? People who lead people, not just on their org chart, but actually people who lead people. And they're like, maybe 20. Okay. Those 20 people your business will rise and fall on those 20 people. Those 20 people are your Sherpa. They're the ones that take everybody else up the mountain. So a really easy assessment is 1 through 10. Take a name of Bob. Bob is one of your team leaders. Put Bob in a circle. Give him 2 numbers. One number is how well he's performing, 1 through 10. And the other number is how well he's leading his leadership, 1 through 10. His performance, he's a 6. Leadership, he's a 4. Then you do that with 19 others, get all 20, aggregate your performance scores and your leadership scores all together and divide by 20, and the average is 6.4. The majority of team leaders, I've done this thousands of times, and it always comes back an average of 6.4. And
Interesting.
so then if you go, well, how's that working for you? You're like, oh, so what has to happen to go from a 6 to an 8 in performance and from a 4 to a 7 in leadership? That's the game right there. And so what we've done is we've made it really strategic. We said, let's focus on the individual first because everyone likes to talk about themselves. So we start with take the 5 voices for yourself, Warren. Let's figure out who you are, how you're wired, what happens under stress, all these like fascinating details that are really thorough and interesting. And then you get to know your own voice. Then you go to knowing your team's voice. Then once you've done that, now it's like, where are they on the development square? Are they onboarding? Are they just being immersed? Are they starting to apprentice? Are they consciously competent? Or are they multiplying? And we basically have a square that we've created that's our roadmap, and it shows them again, who are you, who are they, where are they, and how. And then the other thing we've done, we've created the 5 Voices AI. We now have an AI tool where you can ask if Bob's taken the assessment. I'm like, hey, how do I help Bob get around the pit of despair And how do I get him into the conscious competent, into his empowerment with this role? Well, Jeremie, you're a connector. Remember, Bob's a guardian. This is what he needs. This is what your tendency is. Your tendency is to move too fast. It tells you exactly what to do. So it's been really, really fun putting it all together. And that's really what this book is about.
That's really exciting. So with that AI tool, is it set up like a coach, if you will, from an AI perspective?
It's like a coach in your pocket, but
Yeah.
coaches, executive coaches are using it like crazy to coach their people. And they're even showing them how to use it because people still need help. I mean, it's not AI is not going to take over as the executive coach, but it goes much deeper than they've ever gone before in microseconds.
Yeah, I guess it could be like a batting cage, if you will, in reference to practicing the reps.
Absolutely. Because I can ask it anything like, okay, I've got a performance review with Barbara. She's a nurturer. And then it might say, well, Jeremie, as a pioneer, be cognizant of this is how you could miss her. This is what she's needing. So it's giving me real time perspective on anything. I mean, from a job performance review to I've got a conflict resolution to I've got two employees fighting to, because as a team leader, it's like this resource that instead of trying to go read a book, maybe if I had time, now I've implemented it into my daily routine.
Yeah, that's fascinating in reference to the those tools to be able to help train leaders to be able to adopt the voices into their daily practice. Because I'm sure when we get busy and productivity or distractions interrupt, we go back to our natural bent. So to be able to force that to stay focused on the five voices and really stay in that presence.
That's it.
So when those team leaders, when they start practicing it and they have a tendency to slip back to their old behaviors, how do you help those leaders to continue shaping those new behaviors to really listen to the other voices?
Well, so you've got a couple options. I wish it was as easy as to say, oh, it just works itself out. I'm like, no, your point. People go back to their default. So we have systems in place where we train people called a catalyst. We train people inside organizations to keep it going, like little accelerators, little reminders. And so in a lot of our cases, a lot of our clients, we're just training internal train the trainers who kind of they're almost like sergeants of like, okay, guys, remember. And then it's like, oh my goodness. But we have noticed in the last 4 months since we've kind of rolled out the Five Voices AI, it's now become so addictive because our AI is our own GPT. We've been training it for a couple of years now. So it has so much more than just a regular chat GPT. So they're like loving it because there's like now they're going, well, what about my wife? And what about my kids? And they're bringing it home. And we say, practice it at home. The more you practice it at home and you see how much it works, the more you'll use it at work as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to be willing to do the reps.
Yeah, that's it.
So with our listeners wanted to really dive into that work in reference to maybe the assessment or as well as get a copy of your book as well, what's the best way for them to be able to connect with you?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Well, if you wanted just to take the Five Voices and figure out who you are, just go to fivevoices.com. It's free. You can take the assessment and you can find out what your voice is. So that's a fascinating way to do it. The second thing is obviously the voice driven leader. This book is a highlighting book. It really is so thorough and so meaty. If you lead people, if you're developing people, so you can get that on Amazon. You'll have a link. I'm sure I'll give you my name is hard to spell. JeremieKubicek.com. JeremieKubicek. So again, that's hard, but we'll have a show note for those who want to hear me speak. And then those who want to get certified, I'll send you a link maybe, and you can send them to that information. You can also find it on fivevoices.com certifications, and it's just a great system if you are in the people development space.
Yeah, perfect. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes as well.
Great, thank you.
So, can you share a story of a leader that has adopted really this kind of principles of the five voices and how they changed the culture?
So I had a pioneer, and this pioneer was one of those where I was coaching the pioneer, and he was blowing people up consistently because under stress, his stress behavior is a grenade launcher,
Hmm.
and he would just take people out. So he was just creating turnover. He was creating all types of issues. He had a radical experience with the voices where he saw what it was like to be on the other side of him, not because of his employees, but because his two daughters confronted him of like, this is how
Oh,
you're treating,
interesting.
here's how you're treating your son-in-laws, and you're losing us. And it's time for you to change. They were showing him the broccoli in his teeth. So he came to me as like, what do I do? What needs to happen? You know what? We just started this process, this journey of him seeing the broccoli in his own teeth and then realizing like I'm not as effective as I thought I was. I'm forceful, but that's
Hmm.
leading to compliance. It's not leading to engagement. So how do I do it right? So we then took his executive team and go, okay, well, you've got another female pioneer who's in this. You've got a guardian, you've got two guardians and a connector. And so he had two guardians, a connector, and another pioneer and his nurturing assistant. And we basically worked on scenarios and we did role playing. We worked on what what does he normally do and what's a better way to communicate. And he started to employ these little hacks.
Hmm.
And his team was like, "Does he have cancer? Like, is he leaving? What's going on with him?" And the transformation, I would say it was probably a 2 year evolution. It wasn't a 1 month revolution.
Hmm.
But I can tell you now, after probably 4 or 5 years, they don't remember what he used to be like. There's stories of what he used to be like, but he's changed so consistently now because he's figured out these hacks. And he's like, "Oh, my assistant needs this. Got it. I can be a pioneer to my other pioneer, but to the guardians, they need more detail. To the connector, they need a little affirmation." And so he's been really practicing those kind of things.
Well, that's a powerful story.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. So, since this show is how to become an obstacle buster, can you share maybe a personal story recently that you busted through an obstacle and how that's really impacted your leadership?
Yeah. So for me personally, I live this stuff. So know yourself to lead yourself. And so I was having my obstacle was the way I was viewing provision. I'm an entrepreneur, so I have lots of companies, and I was challenged by how I was viewing just my. It was like a control. When I got to provision, I was being
Hmm.
a control freak about my financials, and I realized I had one change with one of my businesses that dropped my revenue a little bit, and I had some other revenues that were going up, and I have like 9 different revenue streams. And but I realized how controlling I was and what that was showing up like to conversations with my wife and some other people, other of my partners who are running these businesses, where I was putting unneeded stress on them. And all the summer, the obstacle busting was I basically switched my mindset to figure out what do I really just need to live off of? And then what am I going to do with that money anyway, above and
Hmm.
beyond that? And my wife recreated a game plan and a budget and a plan. And my freedom has gone up tenfold because I didn't realize how much my wrong thinking on provision was affecting the way that I actually was experiencing my day. So my peace level is so much higher. My enjoyment so much higher. I went on a walk this morning in my neighborhood, which I never did before in the morning, and it was just things like that that are
Hmm.
changing the way that. So the obstacle was a wrong mindset, and I've kind of renewed my mindset on it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I know there's some great nuggets of truth actually for other leaders that are listening to examine, maybe be more self-aware of how their behavior is driving their leadership.
That's it.
So thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for being on the show and really looking forward to your new book. Getting a copy myself in reference to it. It's somewhere in the process. I know the launch date is coming up, correct?
October 21st. Yep. Is the
Yeah,
launch
so
date.
looking forward to that. I already pre-ordered my book, so I'm really looking forward to getting a copy.
Thanks, Warren.
But
Appreciate
I'll
you.
make sure those links are actually in the show notes as well. But thank you for sharing your strategies and tips, helping our leaders to really overcome those obstacles and build resilience.
Appreciate you. Have a good day.